touch this. Can't touch this. Can't touch this. Can't touch this. Bring it down.
Okay, welcome to Hammerheads, episode the 10th. This is the podcast where we discuss the BFI's list of one great Hammer horror film every year from 1957 to 1974. And we are now in 1966. But this is a very special episode because we have the creators of the Zomblogalypse web series, now a motion picture, which is released on Blu-ray very soon, if not already, when you listen to this podcast. And we have the creators of that web series and motion picture, Hannah Bungard, Tony Hipwell, and Miles Watts.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing? I'm obviously usually the co-host of this with Marcus, this podcast, but we just realized that it would be great to do a sort of crossover because we're doing a very special film. It's very special in many ways, this film, but it does tie in with our own foray into filmmaking, doesn't it?
We're into the zombie genre. This is the first of Hammer's zombie films, Plague of the Zombies from 1966. So yes, it felt it would be a perfect time to discuss Zomblogalypse, given the pending release as well. So let's start by talking about the film. And I think you've all done your homework and watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Right. So this was released, just to put it in some context, 2 years before Romero released Night of the Living Dead. So this could have been the blueprint for the zombie genre had Romero not came along 2 years later and blown Hammer out of the water by defining the genre in North America instead. And they're actually called zombies in this film, but they aren't sort of the flesh-eating zombies that we know. They're kind of mine workers, which is slightly random. What did you think of the film? For people who have made a zombie film, how does it feel going back to the source?
It's very Hammer, isn't it? It's Hammer does zombies. That's what it is. It's like, in some ways, it follows the Hammer tropes. I mean, it's got those great sets. It's got cheesy acting in a brilliant way, the best possible way. I did miss Cushing and Lee in this one, but it's got a very good cast, and it almost could be like Dracula. It's got someone who's very charming in a small village, who's charming women and men to come to him and serve him. So it could be any of the other Hammer films, but it just happens to have zombies in it, this one.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I just really liked, because you don't get to see the kind of like Haitian voodoo zombies like these days at all, do you? You don't get to see those anymore. So it was kind of cool to see that be really true to the kind of the idea of where zombies actually come from. And obviously there's a lot that's not the best film ever made about it, but also I thought it was great. I really liked it. There's a lot that I enjoyed about it.
Did you see the trailer actually for the film on the Blu-ray? It's like these zooming words saying voodoo, terror, drums, death, drums, terror, drums.
Fresh fruit.
Yes.
Murder. Yeah, it started that way as well, didn't it? I love
It
the
really
fact,
did.
because White Zombie is largely sort of, we all sort of think of it as the first zombie movie, but yeah, the Haitian thing, and this does have that connection, and that it's sort of the transitional movie between Haitian voodoo and flesh-eating, brain-eating,
Right.
although brain-eating is also and it's not really a thing, is it? Some zombies eat brains, but Tony or Hannah will have to remind me which film they specifically eat brains in, apart from our movie, because zombies don't eat brains in Romero's movie. They just chew flesh. They'll eat anything, basically. They particularly have a fondness for intestines, apparently. And I thought in one scene they were going to pull someone's intestines out, but I'm like, no, this is Hammer. They won't do that. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was really interesting because I've not seen a great deal of Hammer, but I actually thought it was pleasant to see this without Cushing and Lee, because that's pretty much just all the Hammer I know. So it was nice to see something which had a bit more variety to it, and it's kind of, again, of their time as they are, and like just casually misogynistic all the time. But Sir James and Dr. Peter are quite enjoyable kind of protagonists at times, just kind of the way they were just very kind of forefront in how they just used science to kind of tackle the problem, figure it out, and just kind of press on with it like it was just kind of another Sunday. They seemed to kind of mildly put out the whole time. And although it was interesting, the whole stuff with the mines and the zombies, it kind of just was like, what if Temple of Doom but with zombies? In that regard. But I do think that first reveal of the zombie was very effective. Like that, I think was legitimately kind of chilling image. And I kind of thought it was a shame they didn't use that a little bit more, because I think after that it kind of just got shifted out more to kind of like weird posh dude who's kind of sort of appropriated this Haitian cult to kind of take over these dead people, which is an interesting, very roundabout plot to have, which is kind of utterly nutty.
But a mine.
Yeah, but that in itself was kind of part of what made it fun as well. And I did really enjoy Sylvia, so James's daughter as well. Like I think like she got kind of short shrift in like the third act, but I really enjoyed her scene with the antagonist where she just does not take any of his shit whatsoever. He's trying to like sort of charm her into kind of accepting he's not a bad guy. And she's like, no, fuck you, you're terrible, let me out. I really enjoyed.
She's got a great relationship with her dad as well.
Oh, I loved it.
Yes, although that early
like,
line,
I should have drowned you at birth.
That's it. I should have drowned you at birth. Yeah,
like,
I thought.
Thanks, father, or whatever she says.
Yeah, so thank you, Daddy. I thought Diane Clare was very good. I thought she looked like Lulu for some reason. I thought she looked like Lulu, and I looked at her IMDb. She only seems to have been movies and TV in the 60s, a couple in the 50s, but she had a career in the 60s and then nothing. So clearly she decided that was it. But she'd been in a lot of stuff.
The zombies put her off. But yeah, I would like to see her to get to do a little bit more. She kind of got put in kind of traditional damsel in distress kind of role at the end. But it made sense. They did set it up in terms of like how the curse was working, but how they kind of set up her sort of relationship with the villain. I want to kind of see that followed through a little bit more, but it's kind of just kept that one scene.
Yeah.
She was more capable than they kind of let it be.
Yeah, and then at the end it was that classic thing where the other doctor, what's his name, Peter, followed her, went and sort of followed her and helped her out. And then suddenly there were zombies everywhere and she's just shouting, Peter, like, deal with it, mate, rather than actually doing it herself, which is really frustrating. Yeah,
she turned into kind of like a Roger Moore era Bond girl.
Yeah,
like capable until she's not.
But that's the thing. It was the setup for it was quite good. I was quite hopeful for quite a sort of, a bit of a sassy character, and then it sort of didn't turn out to be anything.
But good bands with the dad.
Good banter with the dad. Marcus and I, because we've watched now, this is the 10th one we've watched. There's 17 that we're watching in this series anyway, because we wanted to watch a load of Hammer films, and we realized there were huge gaps in our knowledge of Hammer movies. So I picked this list, which is the BFI's, and it's just one per year for 17 years, and it's like, here, watch these. And it's been a great watch, because some of them have been amazing and some of them have been quite cheesy. This one sort of in the middle there, I think. But when she gets up and Sylvia gets up and decides to go and join this cult, that's straight out of Dracula. Or there's another one where a woman just suddenly decides to float out the room and I must go, and it's like, it's a Hammer trope, really. I actually thought Alice was a good zombie. I like Jacqueline Pierce as Alice.
She had a bit of a quite a frightening little grin, didn't she? When she sort of went for them.
Yes, I quite fancied her actually, even as a zombie. I thought she was she's got a great face. Like, is it The Brides of Dracula? And it's got that fantastic actress, Marcus, that we were talking about, and she she steals the film. She's just keeps appearing in her, and you're like, whoa, that's your image of that film. So I thought Alice was sort of like. And it was great to see her at the beginning. She looked really poorly, and then she was dead, and then she was a zombie, and she was a scary zombie.
She's probably good in it. I was reading her biography, By Fleet to the Bush, and actually she's a fascinating person. Obviously had quite a troubled life as well. But
did she? Yeah. Hammer are very, very good at picking the sort of the lead male and the lead female, and then having these filler characters that are almost more outstanding because they're given weird things to do. So they're less like Sir James is so, he was great because he was so like, we're going to go grave digging. Okay.
He's fantastic because you feel like he doesn't want to be there. Like he says at the beginning, I'm not going to Cornwall. I'm not going all the way there. And then he goes there, and then it's like the two leads are one old doctor and a young guy who's like doesn't really know what to do because his wife's obviously, very early on zombified. But it's so great having just like a grumpy old dude and his quite nice daughter as the kind of leads.
that would have been Peter Cushing perhaps playing that Sir James if they'd made that with those
I love
guys.
I wouldn't
guy.
want
I
to
thought he
replace
was
him though. I
Yeah.
think Andre did a really good job
was
in it. I think
fantastic.
again, like the casting overall, I think was really solid, and the villain was
Yeah.
appropriately kind of slimy.
Well, I also like the guy who played Peter because he was so kind of like, he was so over the top dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, oh my God. What? No!
There's that bit in the film where Peter is like, I dreamt Alice had her head cut off, and Sir James is like, no, that was the real bit.
Yeah, no,
That
sorry, you
happens.
weren't dreaming that.
Yeah.
That and we'll come to this, but that dream sequence was fantastic.
It was really frightening.
Peter's dream, because that's
Yeah,
the
it's
bit.
really bizarre.
Yeah, that's the bit where I thought, now if they rip his guts out, we're in Romero territory. But yeah, like you say, they don't call, and Romero never calls them zombies. No one calls them zombies in the
that
Romero.
moment when he just goes, zombie. It was
Yes,
great.
yes. Yes, and also there's a bit
Loved
where
that.
the camera pushes in onto James for about 10 seconds, and he says something like, "Come with me." And it's just like, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? It's like, oh, it's a scene transition, right? But it's like, there should be more of that in movies where the camera just moves right. It almost like if it was a Mel Brooks movie, the camera would have moved right up to him and he would have just looked at it and gone, what? Or what a pisser.
Because I'll tell you what happened. You know when Alice was in the coffin and they opened the coffin up and she was there, and then it was on her for a really long time. The quality on my TV was so bad that I couldn't tell if something was happening with like her face. And then suddenly her eyes opened. But what was happening in the time between them starting that shot and then like 20 seconds later when her eyes opened? Like, was her face changing? Was something happening?
Oh yeah, it was a slightly weird effect, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, I think
I
there's
could
that weird
tell.
old cross-dissolving
Yeah.
oddness to show
was it?
something
I couldn't-
odd happening to her.
Right. I just couldn't tell because the quality was so bad through the video that I was watching. I couldn't see any difference. And the blacks are really bad on our TV, so it's like if something's a bit dark, it looks terrible. And
Do you know what? As well, I thought my TV was out of sync. And it's not, and it's I asked Tony recently to help me out with some wireless Bluetooth sync issues, and I sorted them. Thanks to Tony. He went, try this, try that. So I thought my TV was out of sync again. Then I realized the film is out of sync, and it's famously out of sync.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it said it needs another redub, it needs another special effects thing, it needs, and all the reviews say this, that it needs that.
Do you know what it doesn't need more of?
What?
Footsteps.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Films of that era, it's like, it's
Oh my
just
God.
insane. Like,
I
I was
was
watching
pointing
another
out
one, House That
footsteps,
Drips
yeah.
Blood, and like just, and everyone has the same kind of hard-soled shoe. Everyone.
It's like the BBC sound effects thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't need music, you need footsteps.
Hammer is known for being, it transcends its cheesiness, and I think Plague of the Zombies is another one of those Hammer movies that is a bit of a classic. But the fact that it came 2 years before Night of the Living Dead is quite incredible, because it is that sort of rounding up of the Haitian zombie thing, but it's not quite. And Romero, whether it was an influence on Romero, I don't know, because I think what Romero did was come along and just make his version of the zombie. And whereas Plague of the Zombies finishes off what it reintroduces and then finishes off the Haitian zombie thing. But the two films, there's similarities, but in terms of small town, they're coming for you.
Yeah, I mean, Romero
There's a showdown.
could have never made anything so high budget. I mean, I say this is a Hammer horror film, I'm calling it high budget, but there's obviously a lot going in. There's kind of quite a lot of scenery. And
It's a much more traditional film, and just in terms of the way it's shot, everything about it is, you can feel the studio and the sets and things. And Night of the Living Dead is just something was very transgressive at the time, used in so many different ways.
Kind of a chamber piece as well, just the way they.
Yeah, I mean, God, talk about. I mean, I won't give away the ending of Night. Well, we're talking about Night of the Living Dead. I mean, if you don't want to know the ending of Night of the Living Dead, don't listen for the next minute. But the fact that it ends with the hero, who's a black guy, getting out, being the hero of the day, and then a bunch of hillbillies shoot him because they think he's a zombie, or they just don't care. They're like, just kill him. That is such an amazing comment on it. It almost reminded me of like. Repulsion by Roman Polanski. It's one of those movies that it was this changing of the guard, and suddenly every movie after Repulsion it goes into the slasher era.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was psychological horrors, and it was this. But whereas Hammer didn't quite risk that kind of thing. They would never have a black hero.
They didn't
And-
really do transgressive social commentary, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, the only kind of credited, I think, black person in the film is Lewis Mahoney, and he's referred to as coloured servant.
Coloured servant.
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
yes.
Saw it in the credits, and it was like, it's the 60s.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's using Haitian kind of like mysticism and voodoo as like part of the reasoning, but like it's it's not in the control of any Haitians. It's something that British guy is kind of sort of appropriated. But I suppose that is part of
In
like
Cornwall.
again, like, yeah. But again, I think some of that is like some of like the readings that have been had about the film that there's kind of I wonder if this is maybe a little bit kind to the film, but kind of a sort of a commentary on colonialism and a commentary on corrupt aristocracy, because it's the rich people of this town who've stolen something from another land and brought it there. But at the same time, I still think it's kind of like putting something exotic on the foreign and kind of saying something foreign and from another land can't be trusted. Like it doesn't qualify anything around the voodoo. It just sort of says it's bad, just straight up. So it doesn't kind of give it any kind of context to it or texture to it.
We've talked about Hammer doing sort of social commentary in that kind of class before when we've been doing these podcasts, of course. Yeah.
Do you think, and I don't know this, so I'm genuinely asking, the Haitian zombie thing is to do with slavery and a comment on slavery, or is it nothing to do with slavery?
Kind of feels more like it feels like exotica more than anything, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, I think absolutely it's exotica because they're not playing in the way of like they're practically just guys on drums and one servant. And it'd be more loaded if the people they were raising for the dead and using as slaves if they were non-white people. But like it's not. It's just regular folk that that go around the town, like the Cornish people, like just the people there, the white people of that population. So there's nothing about it which is, I think, a commentary on where they've appropriated this.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it at all. It feels like it's being presented. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of commentary
in this movie. Yeah, I wonder if like White Zombie. I wonder if, but yeah, Lewis Mahoney rather, who plays Coloured Servant. He was a great actor. He died a couple of years ago, but he was in Fawlty Towers.
Oh, was he?
He's the doctor.
He's in it for what, like 2 seconds, and he's great for the 2 seconds of the film.
Oh, he's brilliant. He's in that. Out of bed, Mr. Fawlty. And he's like, a doctor here in the hospital, that guy. And also he's in Doctor Who. He plays the older version of a young man who falls in love with Sally Sparrow, which is Carey Mulligan's character. But then the Weeping Angels get him. And then when she next sees him, he's an old man because they stole his life. That's what they do. So he wants to go out with her. And then the next time she sees him, he's in a hospital as this old man, and it's Lewis Mahoney. So he's been in some good roles.
As well as you've got the Haitian exotica, but you've also got the Cornish exotica. I mean, what is it with the Celtic periphery in these films? I mean,
it seems like an oxymoron, Cornish exotica.
It is. If you think about like Cornwall is this kind of slightly unusual part of the UK, isn't it? And it always has been. And like it's got its own language, and it is a slightly unusual part of the UK, I would say.
It's romanticized, I think, Cornwall. Everyone says it's they'll either say "all right, my lover," or they'll say, it's a beautiful place. It's like no place like no other, and it's hard to get to. So everyone there is in this little paradise. And
I think that Hammer did the Reptile, I think, the same year, and used the same sort of Cornish village set as well. So it's
the Reptile, that was good.
There were some lovely accents in it.
Yeah, I do just think it's hilarious thinking of like Cornwall's being exotic, though. I know obviously like there's kind of a notion about it because it's out of the way and things like that, but it's such a vanilla place, really. It's just pretty in fields and just lots of just boring people. Like there's I don't feel there's anything like really.
You just offended everyone from Cornwall there.
No, but I think in terms of like the Cornwall, the films that era kind of denoting, it's like very much kind of like just very straightforward, kind of like I don't know what way to kind of sort of like put it, but just like it doesn't seem like there's anything kind of exciting. It's always presented as a very dull space. I'm not saying like Cornwall like in reality is that, but like,
I don't know that it is.
Yeah, it seems like it's presented in a way like why would anyone want to go to Cornwall? Nothing ever happens in Cornwall. Like that always seems like they place it like that.
Mind you, there's every part of Britain, someone's got a story like that, don't they? Oh God, why would you go to this place? Why would you go to that place? But within those places, you get these great, folk tales and characters, and that's just Britain for you. Wherever you go, you're going to get places that they think are boring, but actually you know. But yeah, the people of the town were presented as quite sort of witless.
Well, you've got that, and then you've got the sort of sinister fox hunting crew.
Oh my God!
Set upon Sylvia as
Oh,
well. Which so
those
you've got they've kind of got
weird
this,
guys.
yeah.
When they were watching her crawling on the floor, and they were like, it was like so scary.
Do you know what I imagine? They're sort of like, they are quite scary, but at the same time they're slightly ridiculous, because you sort of imagine them all like sleeping in sort of bunk beds in one room together somewhere. You know, they're that kind of like, you know, they're like, oh, and then when the guy's like, go away, he's like, like they're not very, they're kind of weird villains. Yeah,
they're almost like Igors, aren't they? Get out, Igor. Yeah. But yeah, they were. I mean, I think the notion of fox hunting is quite scary, and I think I imagine we're all quite anti fox hunting in this group. And so I think seeing a bunch of people dressed up hunting a fox and then chasing a woman is quite. And
then Sylvia saying the fox went that way.
Yes.
And I was a bit like, okay, it's like it's a nice little setup, but like for her. But at the same time, how did they know? How did they know that she'd sent them the wrong way?
Yes,
it was a really nice beat for her. But I mean, I think it's interesting that most films do tend to code fox hunters as pricks, which is great. I don't think you really ever see it the other way around. Oh, they're misunderstood. No,
I don't think you can like. Now I know it's like you'd never hear the phrase as nice as a fox hunter as you know.
Are we supposed to equate them with the zombies as well? Then in some way, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, they're preying on
some kind of predators, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the bad guy. And any movie where the bad guys aren't the bad guys, like anything, you know, from Walking Dead to Romero, the zombies aren't the bad guys. They just happen to be there. It's the people like, you know, that biker gang in Dawn of the Dead. They're the bad guys, you know.
I felt so sorry for the zombies in this. Like everything, you know, when they're in the mines and there's one of them who's just sort of hanging out and they're getting whipped. And then when they start setting on fire and they're just sort of like patting their own bodies to try and put the flames out, I felt so bad for them. I really, really did.
Yeah, that was good. The ending has been roundly slagged off in most reviews, but I was like,
that's it.
I didn't have a problem with the ending at all.
Good.
Yeah, the tin mine and the fire and the
fire. Actually, the fire is one of the scariest scenes, I think, in the scariest scenes in the entire film, because he's trapped there. He can't get out, and you just think, how is he going to get out of that room? And imagine if in a zombie film you just die in a fire. It was so scary. Yeah.
Well, we did. Tony and I shot. It was I think it was the 5th episode of the 3rd series of Zomblog, our web series, where Tony and I are trapped in a barn at night, using a car door to fend off a bunch of zombies. And there were about 20 zombies in there coming for us. I was actually slightly scared. We have a dismembered car door, and we were like, wind the window up, wind the window up.
I love it.
And I was actually slightly scared filming that scene because it was dark. The zombies were really good. And I sort of wanted to get out of there, and I knew it was fake. So the thought of being in a tin mine that's on fire for a start, and I'm either going to burn to death or get eaten and burn to death at the same time, or get eaten while burning and be nice and crispy and barbecuey. But that was effective, I thought.
As zombie aficionados, do you kind of buy that Squire Hamilton could manage to turn these zombies into a pretty effective mining team?
No way. I said when I was watching it with Ben, I was like, how is he making them do that? How do they know they're not going to pick that thing up?
There's a zombie school in the next cabin.
I mean, how do you train them? I mean, they're just mindless, you know.
Well, it seemed like they were just whipping him and just riling them up.
Yeah, but they were doing stuff. You could see they were like moving things, and it was like by our kind of zombie standards, it wouldn't have worked. But by Haitian zombie standards,
it seemed like maybe there's some basic motor functions and stuff. Yeah, they could tell them what to do and they'd do it.
Well, he was using them to make money, which is so funny because in other films about zombies, generally they've used them to exert power. So like in Day of the Dead, which is amazing, they're sort of using them as a power play. We've got zombies herded, we're going to unleash them, we're going to keep them, we're going to experiment on them. It was like this kind of sort of morbid, they do morbid operations on them and that kind of thing. So it's like people had gone really wrong by Day of the Dead. In Dawn of the Dead, they're just sort of running from them. In Night of the Living Dead, they don't know what the hell's happening. But yeah, in this, he's decided to train zombies to mine for tin. I mean,
there's something morbid about, being worked to death, and then even after you're dead, you're being forced to work yourself to the bone. So like,
that's my nightmare. That is.
Well, something to step back. So I imagine it was all working class people who have been risen from the dead. It seemed like that was the case, and it's all being work. Yeah, they've been forced to kind of keep working for this rich guy for tin.
I mean, the thing is, he could have very, very easily just kidnapped the people, enslaved them in the mine, and made them work, and they would have worked harder, and he would have made more money
He
than
would.
killing them, reanimating them in some
I could just
form,
hide real
and then
people.
trying to whip them into doing the work. Yeah, he should have just he did it all wrong.
Cut out the middleman. Just do the
He
work
just didn't have
yourself.
to deal with any unions.
It's very topical at the time of recording. We before we shot Zomblog, sort of concurrently with the first episode of the Zomblog web series, we did a little a sketch called Earl Grey.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I was thinking about that the other day.
I think Earl Grey would have fitted into Plague of the Zombies because he would have been part of the fox hunting troop, but also he would have used that fox hunting troop to hunt people and steal. He would have stolen stately homes and stuff. It just reminded me of Earl Grey. I thought, the bad guy was like, he's just such a prick. The lower classes are foxes, so we're going to hunt them and put them to work and stuff. Interesting. I was going to ask all of you actually, when did you first start watching zombie stuff? Because I imagine Tony will have started watching zombie stuff earlier in life. I will have started watching zombie stuff a little bit later than Tony, and Hannah would probably have been after that. It's partly not even to do with our ages. Marcus, I don't know, but my experience, for example, grew up in the 80s. Marcus and I used to occasionally go to parties where someone was playing a video and we saw things like Prince of Darkness, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, I still remember, we were about 12, 13. Things like Evil Dead used to get played and stuff. And so gradually we built up this video nasty knowledge of horror movies. So I probably started getting into them about 13, 14, but I don't think I discovered Romero until Shaun of the Dead. Right. Which is probably something people would be like, oh, wow, I thought you would like into zombie movies your whole life. But Shaun of the Dead came out, or Spaced actually, let's say Spaced in 99, because he heavily references Spaced in Spaced, Dawn of the Dead. So I went and watched Dawn of the Dead and went, this is one of the most amazing films I've ever seen. So I was about 25 to 30. I got really into Romero and more into Evil Dead and all that kind of stuff and then more recently, Argento. So I don't know, how did you guys sort of discover zombies in the first instance?
Yeah, I think I didn't get to zombies till later in life, really. I mean, I think that I as I say, I've watched a lot of Hammer horror films at my grandma's house when I was very inappropriately young, but it tended to be the more sort of kitsch kind of Dracula type thing, and maybe the more theatrical stuff. Zombies probably were kind of more terrifying, I think, to me at that early age, that there wasn't any kind of method in their madness. They were just coming at you, and it's kind of very cold and unfeeling, unplanned, and you just kind of had to get out of the way.
Tony?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what would be like the age. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it was older than you. Because I had plenty of genre stuff that I loved at the time, but I was a little bit later than that coming to zombie movies. But I think it's a collection of things. I can't remember what came first, but I remember seeing the Romero Dawn of the Dead. And weirdly, I think maybe before that, I saw Tom Savini's remake of Night of the Living Dead first, which is really interesting in a lot of different ways. It changes the ending in an interesting way, but still fundamentally kind of still keeps the same ending, but I think takes a little bit of the edge off. But it also makes the female character, the female lead, have a lot more agency, which I think is an improvement. So I think there's some interesting stuff there, and obviously Savini's makeup stuff is really good.
Yeah, it's good film, very good film.
Yeah, it's kind of forgotten, but I think it's really solid. But like
they should do a proper release of it. That's the problem.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it was cut to ribbons, and then no one's. People have seen the final version. Yeah. Hannah, you were saying something, and then you froze.
Did I? What was I saying?
You said, "Well,
I don't think I was probably much older. Like unlike you all, I'm not such a horror film fan, as we know. I like post-apocalyptic things, and that often goes hand in hand with zombies, which is fine by me. I don't mind a bit of horror, but I'm just like I have quite a low tolerance for terrible gore, unless it goes along with comedy, and then that's fine. But and I don't, if something's, I don't know, like Ben has to go take me to the toilet in the night if we've watched a horror film, I'll wake him up to take me downstairs. So I can't watch a lot of horror films. But I remember watching it was probably Army of Darkness when I was maybe mid 90s. When did that come out? Early
93.
90s. Yeah. So I think I watched that mid 90s. And yeah, obviously things like, just like you, Shaun of the Dead, and obviously 28 Days Later. But I feel like by 28 Days Later, I feel like I definitely watched some more zombie stuff. But I cannot for the life of me think what it was. And the kind of like Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that, for me, all came probably a bit later as well, like you, like after Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, and it was all slow zombies then, wasn't it? And apart from, like you mentioned, 28 Days Later, and at the time,
Right.
I remember there was a lot of people saying, "Oh God, fast zombies are rubbish," and it's like, but 28 Days Later is a great film. It's just like they're feverish zombies that come out, and they're scary. They are scary, man.
Well, even the Dawn of the Dead remake is really good, I think. In regards to your general feelings about Snyder's other entries in his filmography, but I think his Dawn of the Dead remake is viscerally at least, really, really good movie. And I think it loses a lot of the commentary, but like it's still very much a really charged experience. I think 28 Days Later and Dawn of the Dead were a really vibrant 1-2 punch for the zombie genre at the time, because I think it's feeling very stale. But
you don't say that lightly either, do you? So the Dawn of the Dead is one of the greatest films ever made, but the remake is good.
Exactly. But sometimes they are, like The Thing, like every now and then, you do get good remakes, Magnificent Seven, like every now and then, good ones do come along. It's just rare. But another thing for me, which was really major for zombie interest, was Resident Evil. I think that was kind of like the main in to me for zombies for like when I was growing up, and that was very much the classic shambling walk, and that was very, very inspired by Romero. Like Romero even directed the commercial for Resident Evil 2. So like, there's a lot of crossover stuff there. So he even wrote the screenplay for an unmade Resident Evil feature film. So like, there's a lot of that was a big part of my love of that space for a while until kind of like the fast zombie era kind of dropped.
There's a very good book actually called Untold Horror, which I've got somewhere around here, and I think it mentions that. It says the Romero Resident Evil movie that never happened, and I think that eventually the guy who was going to make it just all fell through. It went through.
It would have been way too expensive. I read that screenplay. It's great, but it's give Romero a budget and go nuts, but subtract the social commentary. Like, and your mileage may vary on that, but like I don't think it could ever have been made. It had all the stuff of the game, so it had like zombie sharks and stuff like that. So it was absolutely nutty.
Well, let's move on to Zomblogalypse, because we're lucky enough to have 3 zombie filmmakers on this call. So, Miles, do you want to talk a little bit for the people who haven't experienced Zomblogalypse what it is?
It's started out as a web series in 2008, which now seems like another lifetime, and we started out as a web series. We did 4 seasons of it, and then we always said we wanted to do a movie. So the movie is, you don't have to have seen the web series. Sometimes it's better if you haven't seen it, because the continuity is slightly off. But we wanted to do a big screen version of it, and it's about me, Hannah, and Tony. We are survivors of the zombie apocalypse, and we decide to do a vlog. And we started it in the time when vlogging was just taking off, really. I think our main inspiration for it was Felicia Day. One of them anyway, Felicia Day in the Guild. She's great. She plays this gamer who life is falling apart, and so she does a video series about her and her gaming friends, and she ends up meeting them in real life. And we love that kind of low rent, cheap, low budget stuff. And we said, let's do this between feature films, because we all make feature films too. But Zomblog never became a feature film until 5 years ago, when we shot most, and this is terrifying that it was 5 years ago, we shot most of the film 5 years ago, 4 and 5 years ago, and released it, and it went through all the festivals, and the movie is set 10 years into the apocalypse. So it's like we've settled into this weird nuclear family where it's me, Hannah, and Tony living together, and cats and dogs, mass hysteria, and going out and killing zombies on a daily basis. Then we decided to make a movie about our experiences. So the movie is the movie within the movie. It becomes very meta.
So there was this sort of weird thing that the cast and crew screening of Zomblogalypse the movie took place. I think it was in March 2020. Is that
Oh my
It
right?
God.
was March. It was like March the 7th or 8th, 2020. Yeah.
Now, what was special about that time
Yeah,
period?
if you cast your mind back. It's
Yeah.
this weird life imitating art thing that there's this zombie movie that you're watching one day and then the next day the whole world
You're in
sort of
one.
went into lockdown in a
I had a
pandemic.
really bad cough.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was a really bad one.
You were
Yeah.
like, don't worry, I haven't got COVID.
And everyone laughed. We all joked about it. I probably had COVID.
You probably had COVID.
Well, it's weird because COVID entered the UK. I think the first reported case was in York in a hotel where I was staying in February 2020.
Oh, really?
Yes, what a
'Cause,
coincidence.
Because we got handed these leaflets when we
Hang on
arrived
a second.
saying that don't worry, the whole first floor of this hotel has been cordoned off and like quarantined, but don't worry.
My God.
So yeah.
Well, I remember at the time making a joke. We were saying, if the world ends now, we've just made this fucking film, I'm going to be so
know.
angry.
I actually don't think I did have COVID because when I got COVID, I really knew it,
Yes.
and it was totally different from that cough.
I think we've all had it now. I mean, I got it quite recently for the first time. Ugh, it's just dreadful. Well, I was a recluse for the first 18 months of because I just moved to the country. So part of my new lifestyle, as it were, was living in the middle of nowhere. So it was kind of good timing for me. But as soon as we had to come back into the world, it was like, oh, masks on. But yeah, the movie was it was a labor of love, wasn't it, Tony?
Yeah, well, I think it just felt like unfinished business. It was something that we always felt like. I think we always wanted to kind of like close the book on that period of our careers. It kind of got us started in a lot of ways. It got us noticed by a lot of people, which is really great. So I feel like it was kind of the starting point in a lot of ways for like where our film careers have been going since then. And I think it just felt like only right to kind of come back and try and do a feature of it because we talked about it so much. I've been through the ringer for so many years and different kind of incarnations in it. And in particular, the fact that we'd gone through a crowdfund and we promised people we were going to make a film and deliver it to them. Like that was a big kind of impetus for me. I think for all of us, like just, needed to kind of like deliver on that promise. And so it just this constant feeling of unfinished business. And part of that was recognizing just how hard it is to make a movie. And that just in itself became a lot of the inspiration for what the final version of the film was going to be, because there's nothing harder than trying to make a film. I think sometimes films don't want to exist, like they're actively trying not to exist, and so you have to force them into existence. And the idea of trying to make a movie in an apocalypse is only going to be harder, and particularly when it's these three idiots trying to do it and they have no idea how to do it in the first place, and just trying to con and force these people into helping them make the film. And I love movies about making movies that they are a little bit niche, but I love movies like American Movie, Edward and things like that. So One Cut of the Dead, which we found out about after we were shooting, but movies like that, I think I think they can be oddly uplifting, and usually even when it involves incompetence, because they all have passion, they believe, and even our idiot characters think they're making something special. And I think where that pays off in the film,
as did we,
which is something that kind of came out of reshoots, weirdly enough. I think I think it comes off as oddly affecting. And so I'm really happy with how we kind of came to like what the kind of this big Zombog movie statement would be in the end.
Well, plus it's like the way we made the movie was very much our ethos, which is we're not going to take no for an answer, because when you start to, we've all made feature films now, we've made several between us and together, and you get constantly sort of not even told you can't do it, but life just goes, well, it'd be too hard. Here's an obstacle, here's an obstacle, here's an obstacle. Here's the way the industry works. You'll never do it. You'll never get it finished. You'll never get it funded. You'll never get it released. And somehow you do. I mean, whether it's we're so stubborn and we won't give up, like zombies, perhaps we're the zombies in this, But with Zomblog, we were really insistent we were going to make a movie, and once we decided we were going to make it, we found the money, we found the people, we got so much help making it, and we got the thing finished. And this time we said we're going to get this thing released. And then thankfully, by the time you listen to this, hopefully we would have been at Fright Fest watching our friend's film How to Kill Monsters, and it would have been the premiere of that yesterday if this goes out on the date we were planning on going, and they very
How do
graciously.
you know that? That's in the future.
I can
What?
see the future. It happens when you get to my age, you start seeing into the future because the past is so far away. And Stuart and Paul, who the creators, writers, directors of the movie, they are releasing Zomblog as their first Dark Rift Presents DVD, Blu-ray. DVDs are old. Blu-rays are the future, folks. And the film's coming out. So the film is now available on Blu-ray, hopefully, unless we've sold all the copies in the last 24 hours.
Oh.
In which case we'll print some more. But these are the limited edition, the first run. And so this is a Dark Rift of the company who've put this out. So this is our first movie that the three of us have made together that got onto Blu-ray. Not through lack of trying, which we won't go into. So you'll be able to buy the movie and own it. And it's got loads of extras on the disc, hasn't it? Loads of stuff.
Loads of great extra stuff.
So I have a bunch of questions for you because you three are the heroes, if I can call you the heroes of the movie.
You can call Tony the hero. I think Miles and I are definitely doing everything possible to hinder Tony.
We say anti-heroes, maybe.
Yeah.
Do heroes run away from danger and put their friends in peril? Because if so, we're the most heroic people. Yeah.
So you obviously had to get a whole bunch of zombies together for this film. So what makes a good zombie?
Oh, that is a good question. Commitment, I would say. Commitment to the cause. So if you look at any zombie, usually in a Romero movie, a zombie, I always say this, a zombie who's eating a string of sausages, should be, as they tend to use, well, sometimes they use real guts, or jelly, horrible latex stuff. A real zombie should be going and really enjoying themselves. Whereas I've seen films where zombies are going, I'm like, no, commit, fall over, eat the guts, So to me, a zombie is committed to just chowing down and enjoying himself.
So how do you direct people who have been zombies in your film? And that's kind of a good note. Are there any other notes you give people?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, for the one, I like a bit of like slightly odd bendy movement. So I like a bit of a bendy neck, So when somebody is sort of there and if their neck's like looking a little bit unnatural or a limb's in a bit of a weird place, that's what I quite like from my zombies. When they look like they're a little bit broken, I think that's quite nice.
Who have been our best zombies for that? Definitely Paul Heaney.
Yeah,
Kerry,
Tom Turner.
Paul Heaney.
Yeah. Tony, what's on your list?
Tom Turner.
Turned out. Yeah,
the people who can walk with their feet turned inward as if their ankle is broken and they're putting their weight on it. And
well, I think it's kind of both those things. I think you need to be committed, but I think you also need to have good body control. So I think like that bendy stuff that Hannah's referring to. But yeah, like I think ones who have good body control, have a good sense of themselves, and and like someone like Tom Turner who can just walk full pelt into a sign and send themselves flying to the ground as though that that's the only way that it could go. I think like that's a really vital thing because they have no sense of self-preservation. I think that's an important thing to come across. And I think every now and then as well you get ones who are just it seems like you need really good actors for zombies sometimes, but it is a performance. I think some he can find the pathos in it, and not all zombies have the opportunity to do that, but I think the way they can have something in their eyes going on, I think is really interesting. Particularly, I think there's some wonderful moments at the end of the Zomblogalypse movie where you can see something firing in their brains, and I really enjoy those back in the quieter moments.
I like a deadness. I'd like a deadness in the eyes, but then sometimes like a focus. When that sort of shift happens, it's quite nice. I quite like that.
Well, I thought Jacqueline Pierce did a particularly good job as a zombie Alice in this movie because she did the 3 stages, which is that I'm dying, I'm dead, I'm back, and she was very sad. Those are the 3 stages of zombies. And I always say the saddest zombie is Lenny James's wife in the first episode of Walking Dead. And the story is so sad. I mean, they meet him and he's like, this guy lives in his house by himself and he's watching the zombies.
There's another sad zombie, but I think it's a spoiler, so we can't say it for the Zomblogalypse movie.
In the Zomblogalypse movie, there's a very sad zombie, but yeah, so any zombie where you're like, oh, they're really unhappy and you just you would put them out of their misery, whereas some just come at you and you're like,
Do you ever
Right.
regret not being able to play zombies in your own movie? And I mean, it sounds fun.
Oh, we all did briefly, not in the movie, but yeah.
In the series.
Hannah got bitten in the web series, and then we
Right
turned.
away, so easily.
It's
Useless.
just trying to rat you out.
Yeah. I moved away.
So you made, and actually on the original DVD, there's loads of deleted scenes of you shambling around York in the dark, which we didn't use. And Tony and I, in the one episode, which we sort of reinvent afterwards, we both got bitten, and we were kind of hope. I was quite a scary zombie, I think, and Tony was quite a sort of loping, guts out zombie. But it was weird to play. I can't say I enjoyed playing a zombie. Actually, I didn't feel like I was scary enough or committed enough. Like whereas some of the people we've worked with, it's so brilliant at playing zombies. I mean,
Amazing.
Hannah, you were a very funny zombie. I remember you eating the house keys and stuff, and like just you had.
Yeah. I'll always go for the. I'm not good at scary. I can only go for the comedy.
You were funny because I had to give you the Heimlich,
fun.
and I broke your rib. I'm like, give her the Heimlich, so she pukes up the key. Something broke, and she just wanders off, and that's kind of it's when we see her again. But with the movie, we said we're gonna forget all of that. It's a movie. We have to make the movie for people who might not have seen the web series, and you can't say to someone, go watch 4 series of a web series first, because they're gonna go, no, we're not gonna do that. But some people have said that. Some people have said that on the trailer. They're like, well, I don't know about the web series. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is a new movie. If you like Shaun of the Dead, if you like Romero, One Cut of the Dead, Zombieland, anything like that, you're probably going to enjoy Zomblog.
I mean, one of the most amazing things I always think is you've obviously chosen a genre that isn't cheap to film. I mean, you could be, I don't know, filming Ingmar Bergman scripts on a much lower budget, but you've decided on a genre that's going to need some CGI, special effects. I mean, how do you do that on a budget? I mean, one of the great things about the Zomblog, the movie, is, am I allowed to say in the first opening sequence of the film, there's this incredible CGI moment where it feels that you've kind of splurged quite a lot of your budget.
That was meant to be the last shot of the film, but we rethought things and like, oh shit, what do we do with this great shot? And then we realized, oh wait, that's actually a really good interstitial shot to put in between the prologue and the main film there. So that was not intended.
That's as good as the budget gets, that moment.
Yeah. And that was a favor. That was a big favor.
It's in the trailer. I think the movie, the shot you're talking about is York Minster on fire.
Yes.
Yeah. So the film starts with York Minster on fire, and also Captain Disillusion is in at the beginning and gets his head ripped off, and that's how it starts. And that's in the trailer as well. So it's like, we're not spoiling the movie, but amazingly, because we had to ask so many people for so many favors, that didn't come out the budget. Arillo Films in York did the York Minster on fire shot, and also Alan, who's Captain Disillusion's intern, Alan Melik-Janian, he did the whole Captain Disillusion sequence himself. We didn't, spend money on that. What we spent the money on,
so good.
I mean, basically the money goes on sandwiches, gore, locations, portaloos, all the boring crap, literally sometimes that you
and all that CG on top of that. That's just Muggins here having to do a bunch of it and asking favors from a few other people that we know to try and sort of pull what we can together. But I think, like, to your point, Marcus, I think like it's interesting because you'd think this stuff is expensive, but fundamentally so many films like this are not expensive. They're done very cheaply, and it's kind of like it's classic spitball filmmaking. Like, you're just throwing stuff together. It's very much like Bad Taste or the original Evil Dead and things like that. It's just what do we have to hand? What on earth can we cobble together to make this work? And that was the vibe of the original web series. Like, all I had was a pot of snazaroo, and I was just thinking like, well, if the Garanga zombies are good enough for Romero, that's good enough for us. So we just go with something which is comic. And I think more what gets us off the hook is what was very deliberate about the web series is doing it as a found footage thing, and very much the zombies being almost secondary to the story. Is very much looking at the characters, and that kind of gave us license not to kind of have to focus on that. And I think obviously, at the end of the day, if we had more money, we'd love to have gone bigger with it. That's what originally
the original script was much bigger. Yeah,
the original script is what turned out to be Zombieland 2.
Like that was so close, it was ridiculous.
I haven't seen it.
We spent 2 or 3 years working out this very elaborate Hollywood, because we did have the film with a Hollywood studio for a while. This is a sort of famous, not famous fact. But what happens is when you get a film to Hollywood, it does not mean suddenly you're going to have $100 million to be, it means someone's reading it and they'll either get back to you or you'll never hear from them again. But when we were at this Hollywood stage with the Zomblog movie, yeah, it was going to be a bunch of militant military freaks versus a bunch of hippies. And it sort of turned out to Zombieland 2. We watched it and we went, that's very close to what we were going to do. We didn't end up doing it. But it's like, I was really happy about that because I was like, there you go. It's a big mainstream comedy zombie movie and they've done the same plot as we were going to do. We're obviously on the right lines, but we ended up doing something very meta and deconstructive. And like you say, an Ingmar Bergman film, you'd probably need better lighting than we had. So it'd probably be more money.
That's the only way we could have made this. Like, we couldn't have made this movie any other way with the resources we had. So sticking to the found footage kind of approach to it, and then also making it kind of more like kind of a docudrama comedy. So something kind of like this is Spinal Tap with zombies. Like, going that route with it was the only way we could make it happen, because we didn't have the time or the money to get better kit. We didn't have the manpower to support that either. So it was very much, it was a very skeleton crew pulling it together. So we were never going to be in a position for it to be on a bigger scale. And I think that's part of like the agreement we hope people have going to the film, is that thinking of it more like something like The Office with zombies as opposed to something like Zombieland. And it's interesting sometimes, because I think sometimes horror fans, for the most part, are very welcoming of low budget film, because they're in it for story and for invention and things like that. And I think we have all of that. But sometimes as well, I think they can kind of look at found footage and just think, oh, that's cheap, it's no good, and therefore it's crap, and not recognize the fact that it looks bad is part of the aesthetic of good found footage. Like, we're very, very deliberate about how we do that. Like, there's all sorts of different formats the film shoots in across kind of like the lot of it. And I think if you're looking at that, there's a lot of consideration in how naff it looks throughout. Like, we did a lot of research into really bad grades for the film within a
DV
film.
tape and stuff like that.
So there's a lot of thought behind how stupid the film is. So I think that's part of the thing as well, which I think this kind of goes back to the web series as well. Like, in found footage in general, I think it's a very Marmite subgenre within horror as well, which is very interesting. But it's been very gratifying to see it really work with a lot of people who kind of like really buy into this weird reality we've created.
And there's a very fine line, isn't there, Hannah, between stupid and
clever.
And clever, yeah.
It is supposed to look bad for a lot of it, and I think a lot of people don't really realize that. But I mean, a lot of people do, and that's great.
A lot of people do. We want to belong to that. There's a genre of film, and some of our favorite movies were the inspiration for us doing the web series, Blair Witch Project, Cloverfield, Wreck. Some of those films are downright ugly, but brilliantly done. And Wreck is still the scariest movie. My God, I went to see that in the cinema at night with an audience. It was in screen 3 of City Screen York, so it was a small screen, about 100 people. But the fear in that cinema, I was scared. The first time you see the creature, I felt chills going down my esophagus. I was so like, oh, what the hell is that? I felt like, oh, when you're at night and you go down, like Hannah, you go down to use the loo at night and you might see something or hear something. The chill you get, I got that watching Wreck. And the last half hour of that film, and most of the film is shot on night vision.
Which we homaged in the first season of Zomblog as well, which is fun.
We did.
Yeah, as I was disappointed we couldn't get any night vision into the feature. It just didn't really fit, unfortunately.
Do you know what though? I think partly we shot that all during the day, apart from that 1 or 2 scenes in the scare house, because the cameras just love sunlight. And we didn't have to have a huge, great lighting rigs and stuff. And when we're throwing cameras around left, right, and center, you need a lot of light. So we kind of daytime film.
The whole thing about front loading the film with the CGI, the really impressive CGI effects, that was really inspired, I think, because you just then, as an audience member, that is the context that you then remember for the rest of the film, the wider world kind of on fire. And it doesn't matter then if the rest of it can be played out in kind of a more chamber way, because you've already got that wider context. Right. And so I thought that was great. And there was an audible intake of breath from the audience when that scene came on screen.
Well, you have that double whammy. You have
Captain get back.
Yeah, that's as good as it's going to get. You put the freaks up front, as they say. Captain Disillusion's head comes off, followed by 10 years later, Minster's on fire. And the audience reaction was, oh, whoa, like that. And I think after that, it all goes downhill. No, it doesn't. It's great.
It's great. And you also have some great actors in there as well.
Oh yeah.
Nothing against you three, but then we've got Andrew Dunn of Dinner Ladies.
So great.
We've got Joanne Mitchell of Coronation Street and Emmerdale fame.
No, it's Emmerdale Farm, Marcus.
Sorry,
And we've got Andrina Carroll as well, and Andy and Andrina, who
We've obviously got Lindsay Crane and Aaron Dennis as well.
and Lindsay Crane and Aaron Dennis, who we will have just seen in How to Kill Monsters, as they're the two leads in How to Kill Monsters. And Aaron is one of the funniest guys we know. Again, we've put him in the web series 3 or 4 times. There's loads of different characters. He's a comedy genius. He really is.
He's in every season apart from season 4.
Yeah, because it's really just us in season 4. But the actors in that film were outstanding. All the supporting cast, Lucy Simpson, everybody playing these characters that were so put upon by us. Every time we were working with them, we almost felt bad that we were treating them so badly, but we had to lean into our callous.
Treating them the same way that our characters treated them in the film, some might say.
Turn up and do things, and we'll just reap the glory. But I remember, Marcus, one moment from the premiere I really liked was because Marcus and I have known each other as avid listeners of this podcast will know for a long time. We went to school together, and Marcus, I remember at the end you said you had a tear in your eye because of the shot where, and so did my wife Vicky. She said when there's a scene where the three of us are all in a scene towards the end of the movie, and you and Vicky both said that it made you cry because you felt really proud. No, because it's when the movie's ending, so the movie's ending, and the movie when the movie wraps up, you both said you were like, oh.
Yeah.
So
again, that I know which beat that is, and that came out of reshoots, which was brilliant because we thought
it came out of One Cut of the Dead, actually, didn't it?
We thought we knew what the ending was. We thought we had it. We thought we considered it, and it made sense on the page. I think that's the interesting thing. Like we'd spent, I think there was 18 drafts from the beginning. I mean, the last one was wildly different once we changed what the identity of the film was, but it just made sense for us what the original ending was, which we just kind of fucked off back home, like. The Seinfeld ending. Nothing was learned, but
the Seinfeld ending.
But then watching the film through, we just realised that this needs a button, and I think I'm really happy with the one we came up with.
Yeah. We were grading the film, and I turned up and said these two said the film needs a new ending. We need to shoot a new ending, and we need to do some extra scenes as well. So we came back a few months later.
And you just said, all right.
I said, no, I said, you're right. Well, the thing is, the three of us never bullshit each other. It's like, we know, usually it's a democracy of two people. We just know when something's working or not working. And if basically they just went, we need to reshoot the ending because X, Y, and Z. And I just went, yeah, you're right. We do.
It was because Tony and I had just watched, well, Tony had already seen it, but then they showed me One Cut of the Dead, and we watched it and we were just like, the emotional payoff at the end of this film is so fantastic. It's so big. What is the emotional payoff at the end of Zomblogalypse? Like that, it kind of just fizzles out. And we realized, this is.
We went big at the end. It's got a big ending. But so, Marcus, going back to Plague of the Zombies, because I know this is a double header episode. Really, it's got two purposes. I think Plague of the Zombies is one that I don't know why I hadn't seen it before, because it does fit into the whole, almost like you see Plague of the Zombies and then you go, I want to go back now and see White Zombie, and I want to see some of the Haitian ones. I want to see some of the 30s, 40s, 50s ones, because I've mostly seen Romero, Argento, Fulci, all of the great classics, and then the modern ones, obviously. I feel like now there's a gap in my, as we did with Hammer, there's a gap in my knowledge of those movies. So I'd quite like to go back and watch 4 or 5 zombie movies from those early decades now. I don't know about you guys, but
I'd quite like to watch more Hammer horror, to be honest.
Ooh,
great.
You're in the right place.
Yeah. And by the way, every single time that you've said Hammer, I've gone, Hannah? Oh. Every single time.
Well, you'll be starting your own company soon, won't you? Hannah Horror. So we'll look forward to that. But yes, I can seriously recommend watch any Hammer film. You will get something out of it. There's just got a certain. Tony, you've seen a bunch of Hammer, haven't you?
Yeah, I watched The House That Dripped Blood the other day.
Is that Hammer? Is that?
It felt like it was a Hammer because it had Christopher Lee, it had Peter Cushing. Like it felt like it should have been a Hammer film.
I think that is an Amicus.
I just assumed it was.
I think it's Amicus.
That was.
Marcus and I were talking when we started we said when we started the podcast, I think I'd seen more Amicus movies than Hammer, because there's things like The Beast Must Die and stuff like that. But they did use Cushing and Lee as well. But Hammer, he's obviously Dracula. He's famous for. Beast Must Die.
I'd like to watch more stuff from Hammer, but I do want to watch more things from that era. I recently saw Blood and Satan's Claw for this first time, and that was tremendous.
So
like
yes,
that was legitimately chilling in a bunch of ways. I think I'd like to find more films like that. And I've seen like Witchfinder General, which isn't really a horror, but kind of is, just because it's real. So try and find more stuff like that.
Blood on Satan's Claw, again, it's got a great female lead, and she's terrifying. And it's directed by, is it Piers Haggard, who's Daisy Haggard's dad? And I didn't know that until I was like, oh, Daisy Haggard is this great comic actor who's in Back to Life and Breeders and stuff like that. And her dad was Piers Haggard, who did Blood on Satan's Claw. So what a great way to grow up. Hopefully she'll make a horror film one day. I think she'd be very good at that. But yeah, again, anything like that is just, once you dip your toe into this murky water of schlocky horror, the schlocky horror show, there are some real gems in there that you think, I wouldn't normally have sought that out, but but then horror has always been terrific. Horror in the last couple of years, we've had some great horror movies, low budget horror films like Deadstream and Spree, and pick your favorite, Babadook, It Follows. I mean, the last 10 years have been really strong for horror, and it just never abates. And people always go, oh, horror's back. I'm like, it never goes anywhere. Never goes anywhere. It's never gone anywhere. Even like, oh, well, Scream revived the horror movie. I'm like, go back and look and see what was happening.
They just revived the slasher genre.
Yeah, slasher
I think it's just the case that you see different genres kind of rise and fall, but horror's pretty much the only robust genre that exists.
Well, Tony and I are both trying to get a few horror movies financed at the moment, and it's like, again, we hear
and
again, and we're all trying to get. Well, look, we're all trying to get, because we all keep getting drawn to horror because it's such a strong genre, and it's a fun one to do.
It is fun. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it will always sell. Someone will always want to see a horror movie.
I was going to say, Miley, before we sign off, can you remind our listeners how they can get their filthy hands on a copy of it? So they might not have filthy hands, our listeners, but if they do, where they
Let's
can
face
get
it, they do.
On your DVD.
If you want to get a copy of Zomblogalypse the movie on Blu-ray, you can. Hannah's yawning already; she's bored.
Sorry,
We've got to do mate. We have to do a marketing campaign for this. Come on. You can get it from Dark Rift Films or zomblogalypse.com, where there will be links to them. And we're also going to be pimping the hell out of it on every single social media outlet that we can in the next few weeks. But get in there quickly, because there's only a limited edition of first print copies, which have got so much stuff in them, art cards and collectors things and signed things.
All signed,
and hopefully we're doing a couple of events. But yeah, if you're one of the first to get one, and please let us know here or at the Zomblog Facebook page, because we do have some phenomenally rabidly passionate fans who we love dearly, and they'll just support anything we do, and we hope to pick up a lot more like that. But go to one of those websites.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a joy to see you all and hear more about Zomblogalypse. And thank you for watching the film and being part of our podcast this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Next time, we will be talking about the 1967 Hammer film, Quatermass and the Pit.
OMG. I love that film.
OMG.
I think this year is an anniversary of some kind for Quatermass and the Pit. It might be something to do with Nigel Neal, the writer. It might be something to do with the film itself. I'm going to have to look that up. But yeah, what a great film. I'm looking forward to that one.
So we'll see you next time. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Tony. And subscribe, and we'll see you on the next Hammerheads podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.